Hey guys, Do Legit City here. Today we're going to be going over some mechanics in the game of Oxygen Not Included. Today we're going to be going over the Self-Cooling Steam Turbine. If you guys heard of this design before or used it, this design uses the output water from the steam turbine to cool the turbine in and of itself. The logic being is that the steam turbine will always condense the steam regardless of temperature into a liquid at a fixed temperature of 95 degrees. Depending on how many of these intake spokes sucking up the steam is sucking up steam, you're going to get 400 grams of water per spoke. So at 5 of them open, we get 2,000 grams. And of course, the steam turbine, will keep operating as long as its internal body temperature is below 100. Meaning that the moment it hits 100 or goes over, it's going to stop functioning. However, because the turbine output water comes out at a fixed 95 degrees, we can use that liquid to cool the turbine in and of itself. Of course, this seems like it's very strong, very broken, and while it's very efficient in terms of self-cooling, not needing an aqua tuner or anything associated with that to cool the building, it does have an issue, and it's really just the limits. Because the steam turbine displaces about 10% of the steam heat onto the turbine in and of itself, that means that once the steam reaches a too high of a temperature, this is actually going to start to fail. So today we're going to be discussing the limits of the design and what I would do to increase the threshold of those limits. So if you guys haven't seen the design before, it's very simple. All you do is take the output of the steam turbine, run it as a radiant pipe. I'm using refined copper, and really all you need to do is use this and then run it into the box again so that you could cool down the steam. Of course, assuming you have steady steam temperature, and if you guys don't have steady steam temperature, the more steam you add per tile, the more consistent the temperature will be. That also means that your steam is not going to spike up in temperature as high, as the amount of steam you have is going to influence how high your heat can spike in terms of temperature. So the more steam per tile in terms of kilograms, the more the temperature is going to be averaged out and consistent and not spike up to an absurd number before cooling back down. Now, that being said, let's start the conversation about the limits. So, the design does recommend that you have hydrogen gas and, of course, 2,000 grams per tile, given the gas vent limit, is going to be what we're going to use. Of course, we are in sandbox mode for this so that we could very easily simulate stable temperatures. And the very first design with just hydrogen and the radiant piping to self-cool, the limits are going to be 135 degrees Celsius. Once the steam goes above that, you start actually going over the 99.5 degrees Celsius temperature of the turbine, which means it's going to start creeping up to 100. Now, while you can go above the 135 degree temperature by a little bit, if you go over 140, you're going to very likely overheat your turbine, causing it to stop functioning. So the effective range I would recommend is 130 and 135. That also means that if your steam temperature is below that range, let's say it's at 125 to 127, it's actually going to be okay. So anything below 135 would be what's recommended. However, the range for this is going to be based off of the 99.5 degrees temperature. While you can theoretically go up to 140 degrees steam, it will push a turbine to hit 100 degrees. So we're going to go with a 99.5 variable instead so that we're teetering on the edge. Now, of course, with this design, since the limits are at 135 degrees, anything more than that starts pushing it over the threshold. How can we improve the threshold without adding anything that consumes power? Of course, if it was self-powering, it'd be fine, but I want to try some powerless alternatives. And what I found out in my testing was that we could actually add domesticated Wheeze warts on planter boxes. I found that each individual Wheeze wart in this environment will increase the threshold by about 14 degrees Celsius. The exact numbers are about 14.313. However, that's going to be rounded down so that we have somewhat of a buffer as well. Each Wheeze wart will increase the steam temperature threshold by 14 degrees Celsius while maintaining the temperature above below 100. So if we were to add 1, the threshold would go up to 149. If we were to add 2, it will go up to 164 because of the decimals adding. And of course, if we add 3, it'll go up to 178. And if we add 4 Wheeze warts, 2 on each side with the hydrogen environment, it's going to go up to 192. That means that with just Wheeze warts and the radiant piping from the turbine, you're going to be able to keep the turbine cool enough to keep running indefinitely. All of these will approach 99.5 degrees on the turbine in and of itself, but it should not ever go above unless the steam temperature goes above said threshold. This is going to be an example of what I am talking about. This is going to be 2 Wheeze warts on each side. The steam temperature is at 162. It has gone down after the output water is coming out and cooling down the steam. However, we've let this run for a while, and it looks like the Wheeze wart's internal body temperature is what keeping the hydrogen down, but the math says that it should never actually go above 99.5. Of course, that means that you would add Wheeze warts on the left and right, and then if you were to add the third, it would be on this tile, and the fourth one would be on this tile, meaning you would have to expand the box. Of course, we are using the vacuum door setup, meaning all the heat that's created by the turbine is maintained inside so that we do not have to worry about the heat leaking out. Of course, you guys will have to manage the heat if you guys just have a normal door setup like this with the turbine, meaning the door touching the oxygen is going to exchange heat with the inside of the turbine. So if you guys do that, you guys will have a little bit more leeway, but it comes at a cost of heating outside of the turbine room. If you guys are okay with that, guys go right on ahead. However, I do recommend doing the vacuum door setup. But guys, that has been the self-cooling steam turbine setup and how you could improve about it and the steam temperature thresholds for each additional Wheeze wart. In a nutshell, each Wheeze wart will increase your threshold of the steam temperature by 14 degrees Celsius, and the baseline no Wheeze wart self-cooling steam turbine tops off at 135 degrees. With that, each additional Wheeze wart will give you more leeway, and if you do approach 200 degrees, all you need to do is add 4 Wheeze warts and it will let you go up to 192. Of course, that means if you want to go above the 200 degree threshold where it starts to become inefficient, you will need a 5th Wheeze wart. But at least now you guys know the guidelines of what you guys will need to do for self-cooling your steam turbine. Of course, the Wheeze warts will have to be domesticated if you guys are trying to use pips to plant some wild Wheeze warts. Just understand that the Wheeze wart is going to be weaker by a factor of 4, meaning that you're going to need more natural Wheeze warts to make up for the difference. So specifically, those values are for domesticated Wheeze warts in planter boxes. But guys, that has been the self-cooling steam turbine setup and how to improve the thresholds of the steam it can actually pick up. If you guys have any questions, leave a comment down below. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and of course guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you guys.